While we still haven't quite sorted out how to get around the music bots for a full-fledged episode on film scores, we're going to take a stab at the next closest thing. From rap battles to sing-alongs to boombox blasts, these are our picks for the 10 best uses of music in movies of all time. The official term for the kind of music we're looking at on this list is diegetic, that which originates from inside the world of the story. And while that usually excludes soundtracks, sometimes films cleverly embed them in the scene itself. There's a musician or a record player or a jukebox in the world that just so happens to play exactly the right music to orchestrate what's about to come next. Like how the post-apocalyptic Dictator has brought along a crazy dangling guitar player for this exact purpose, or how the Shaun of the Dead jukebox magically seems to sync up perfectly to every move that the story makes. And while musicals are an entire study in are they or aren't they diegetic, we've decided to set them aside from this list for a future installment. But other great examples that toe this line include the first heist in Baby Driver, the alien opera singer in The Fifth Element, the household jazz quartet from the Triplets of Belleville, and this surreal drummer from Birdman. But if there's one use of music that most perfectly scores a scene from within it, it's gotta be this one from Hero. Where a typical non-diegetic soundtrack is essentially an external comment on the action that's taking place, the diegetic soundtrack is like a scene commenting on itself. The music ceases to be the filmmaker's opinion about the world and instead becomes an utterance by and of it. And this scene takes that idea even further, because not only is this old man scoring a fight, he's scoring a fight that's actually taking place inside their heads. And then, to take it another step beyond that, this is all embedded an extra narrative layer deeper within an untrue story being told to mislead the king. So it's a made-up story about an imaginary fight set to in-universe music. All of it simply a reenactment and musicalization of Nameless's inner world. Of course, on the other side of the coin from scene that scores itself perfectly is scene that ironically scores itself in exactly the opposite way from what you would expect. This is called contrapuntal scoring, where the filmmakers pick a soundtrack that's particularly oppositional to what's happening in a scene. It imbues the film with a sense of irony towards its subject matter. There is an uncanniness between the story and how it's being told to us. But when the contrapuntal score comes from within the world of the story, it is no longer the perspective of the film that's weird and off. It signals to us a perversion of tone inside the characters or the world they inhabit. Consider Reservoir Dogs' famous Stuck in the Middle with You, or American Psycho's Hip to be Square, or Boogie Nights' Jesse's Girl, or Blue Velvet's In Dreams. Life of Brian plays it for laughs, while The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo plays it for terror, but we think none of them do it quite as well as Full Metal Jacket's Mickey Mouse March. Stanley Kubrick is kind of the master of the contrapuntal score. He uses it in 2001: A Space Odyssey, in A Clockwork Orange, but never quite as eerily as here, probably because it never hits quite as close to home. 2001 gives us the musical perversion of an imaginary computer, and Clockwork shows us the musical sadism of an already hard-to-believe sadist. But Full Metal Jacket's turn is something far more believable and sadly familiar. This playful, innocent, childlike tune chanted in warlike cadence as soldiers march through the burning wreckage of Vietnam thoroughly blurs the line between boys and men, between human beings and war machines, and perfectly highlights the inhuman split that Stanley Kubrick thinks might occur in the life of a soldier. Beyond tone, music placement in a scene can also help us get to know a character. And choosing music diegetically can often be a stronger choice than just a soundtrack, because it's not just a comment on the character, but a comment on the character by that character. It's how they feel about themselves. The best songs attached to characters include M's In the Hall of the Mountain King, Guardian of the Galaxy's Come and Get Your Love, Jessica Rabbit's Why Don't You Do Right, and Willy Wonka's Pure Imagination. However, for our favorite pick of this ilk, we're very, very partial to the Clash at Demon Head's performance of Black Sheep from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
That guy on bass?
Oh, yeah?
That's Todd.
I know! Oh, yeah?
You know?
Oh, yeah!
Oh, no.
Sure, we've met Envy briefly before, but this is really her first appearance in full storied form. And is there a better imaginable way to introduce not only the heart-rending ex-girlfriend, but also her new boyfriend / ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend's ex-boyfriend? Metric's original song is awesome, but Brie Larson's cover, while not necessarily better, is definitely the perfect thing here. Combine that with one of the most cleverly staged and shot concert sequences that somehow manages to actually use our pet peeve of split screen brilliantly, and you've got yourself some fans. Scott Pilgrim and all enterprising singles at karaoke bars know more than most that diegetic music can also be an extraordinary thing to bond over romantically. There's something about music, especially when participating in it, that really allows the emotions to come to the fore. So on film, that's Johnny and June flirting on stage over It Ain't Me, Babe, or lip-syncing along to Love is Strange and Dirty Dancing, or Pulp Fiction twisting to You Never Can Tell. It's composing a ukulele tune with a computer in Her, or Blue Valentine's Street Side Serenade, Before Sunrise's Listening Booth, Before Sunset's Nina Simone Seduction, or Call Me By Your Name's Bach Flirtation. But our top pick for charm? It's the pink-haired karaoke scene from Lost in Translation. This scene is a pretty important lesson in how there really is no substitute for real chemistry. You cannot fake that kind of connection or that kind of fun. And Johansson and Murray so beautifully capture the kind of bittersweet, push and pull, will they, won't they, can't they dynamic in this room full of other people where they're really only there with each other. And the music provides not only the perfect conduit, but also just enough sense of play to keep the distance safe. The music isn't just an expression of feelings, it's a performance of an expression of feelings. It's a make-believe opportunity for them to try the feelings on for size without having to own them, like an emotional pink wig, and it allows the entire subtext of this scene to come brilliantly to life. But romance isn't the only kind of bonding that can happen to a tune. Shared music breaks emotional icebergs of all kinds, from a car full of fools belting Bohemian Rhapsody in Wayne's World, to a group of old friends who ain't too proud to beg in The Big Chill, from a beautiful moment between man and child in Grosse Pointe Blank to the climax of Under Pressure, to our pick for number 6, the reconnection of an entire band on their tour bus to the irresistible charm of Elton John's Tiny Dancer in Almost Famous.
Blue jean baby, seamstress for the band.
This one here is a diegetic trick, appearing first as if it were soundtrack before the gradual revelation that it is actually playing on the bus, as if the melancholy tone of the film infects the story itself until the story and storytelling are finally in alignment. And that's what this scene is really about. A gradual, piecewise alignment of a ragtag band of separate individuals into a unit to the tune of an unstoppable earworm that the members literally cannot help but connect over. And even as the scene teases us with shots of Russell as the last and toughest holdout, it builds itself to a perfect climax where he can't resist any longer, and finally, at the peak of the brilliant chorus, rejoins the group in song. We want to take a brief stop halfway through our musical tour here to look at another kind of movie music that doesn't quite demand a category of its own, but that wouldn't feel right to leave out. Music playing for no real reason other than the fact that music is great, and sometimes it's just nice to listen to it. These are Life Aquatic's French Bowie covers, Tropic Thunder's Tom Cruise Dance, but if we're going to take a moment here to jam for the sake of jamming, it's gotta be the literal intermission accordion cover of Let My Baby Ride from Holy Motors. But okay, back to the numbers. Next up, we're looking at all the times movie characters use music to express their sense of celebration. Some of the best come in the form of Jack Black's Let's Get It On in High Fidelity, Marty McFly's Johnny Be Good in Back to the Future, Ferris Bueller's Twist and Shout, 500 Days of Summer's Dreams Coming True, and Bridesmaids' Wilson Phillips Sing-Along. However, if there's a moment of musical celebration we think can't be beat, it's gotta be the Palace Ballroom performance of Everybody Needs Somebody to Love by the Blues Brothers. Surrounded by state troopers, the Blues Brothers cannot stop that irrepressible charisma that makes them who they are. It's a victory lap in front of a sold-out crowd of the successful fundraiser the brothers have spent all movies so far trying to pull off. Of course, we probably could have picked most of the Blues Brothers songs for this track. They're almost all a celebration of some kind. That's kind of their relationship with music. Two men on a mission from God, imbued with the power of song. But we just like this one best. Emotional expression is pretty much what music is best at, so there's no lack of scenes that make creative use of it. Of course, that emotion isn't always celebratory. There's also grief in A Welsh Lullaby, remorse in Pippin's Song, childishness in Pretty Girl Rock, loneliness in Wise Up, regret in New York, New York, and deep sorrow in Llorando. But the one we just can't get out of our heads came so very recently, a desperate, terrified need for comfort in I've Never Been to Me from last year's You Were Never Really Here. You Were Never Really Here is one of the best movies we've ever seen that will absolutely wreck your entire day. And we were originally turned on to it by one of our viewers here, so a big thank you to Spencer for totally crushing our souls. But amidst its many, many brilliant moments that put you deep inside the head of a thoroughly wounded man is this moment here that finds our hero lying on the floor with a man he's just mortally wounded as they sing an absurdly contrapuntal song that never ends up feeling absurd, only just very, very sad. And we think that's because this counterpoint here between music and scenario is less about reveling in the irony than in acknowledging that the hardness of hate and the weakness of vulnerability are not opposite ends of the spectrum, but actually the closest of bedfellows. And for a moment, this song lets us see right behind it. One step up from expression is outright communication, where the message takes the form of music. The classic example here is Say Anything's boombox blasting In Your Eyes through the window, but there's so many more. A message of patriotism in Casablanca's Les Marseillais, of revolution in V for Vendetta's 1812 Overture, of control in Ex Machina's Get Down Saturday Night, of mother's presence in Que Sera Sera from The Man Who Knew Too Much, and of weaponized terror in the form of Ride of the Valkyries from Apocalypse Now. But for our number 3 pick, our favorite use of music as a message goes to The Marriage of Figaro from The Shawshank Redemption. Now, this might not immediately seem like an obvious candidate for music as a message. At first glance, we quickly lumped it in with the emotional crowd, because it is, after all, such an emotional moment and piece. But if you break down its function in the scene, and especially the reason why Andy is playing it, we think the message becomes clear. Hope. A reminder to all the prisoners in Shawshank that there is still beauty and freedom in the world, even if they are kept apart from it. And a secondary message too, one embedded in the very act of playing it, that sometimes hope is worth rebelling for.
Andy, let me out!
Narrowing in on the finish, one of our favorite ways diegetic music can be used in film is as a motif. In movies, this repetition allows pieces of music to quickly accumulate layer upon layer of meaning, each one building upon the last until the piece takes on massive symbolic significance. This can build up in a grating repetition, as in Groundhog Day's I Got You, Babe, or get twisted from one thing into another, as Ludwig van's Ninth Symphony from A Clockwork Orange. It can become a driving force, as with Oh Brother Where Art Thou's Man of Constant Sorrow, or be refracted in all manner of different incarnations, as in The Long Goodbye. Inside Llewyn Davis attaches immense meaning to Fare Thee Well and then brings it to a crushing climax, but for our favorite music as motif, we think that California Dreamin' in Chungking Express is about as good as it gets.
我跟他最接近的时候，我们之间的距离就有0.01公分，我对他一无所知。6个钟头之后，他喜欢着另外一个男人。
It is so hard to explain here the power of California Dreamin' in Wong Kar-wai's brilliant tale of loss and longing, because it really is an effort of build-up and accumulation. The song is used a total of 8 times throughout the latter half of his diptych, and for so many different reasons. As a character introduction, an obstacle, a gag, an escape, a reminder, eventually even an annoyance, and then, finally, beautifully, magically, as the most touching, accidental evidence of love you could imagine. It really is one of the most spectacular long games in movie music history. And finally, in our top slot, we want to take a special look at those moments where music becomes the conduit for the drama that's taking place, where the conflict of a scene is played out not just to music, but through music, where all the emotional subtext and character motivation and wants and desires and obstacles and twists and turns are being waged on the battlefield of song. Battles of the bands, rap battles, guitar duels, but there are other nuanced forms of it as well. There's a much labored emotional awakening of the shadow self that plays out on stage during Black Swan's Swan Lake performance. There's a crying out against assailants from behind the walls of the fort in the strings of a violin from the Alamo. There's a late-night duet sung between two people who very much intend to kill each other in The Night of the Hunter. There's an entire relationship that plays out in a final performance, from humiliation and betrayal to attack and ultimately partnership in Whiplash. However, for our top pick, we've got to give it to Amadeus.
Start with the voices. Basses first. Second beat of the first
Time.
Common time. Second beat of the first measure.
What is so fantastic about this clip is that Foreman doesn't shy away from the jargon and vernacular of an actual composer, and he doesn't waste time to try to explain it to us either. Mozart speaks with the real authority of a musical genius, and instead of us getting caught up in the literal detail of it, we instead get to put all of our energy into what's happening beneath it all. A frenzy of creative energy on a deathbed, a jealous rival trying to keep up, struggling to stay ahead, failing, eventually giving in to the master, and as a reward, getting a chance to participate in his mastery for one small moment in his small career. It is a rivalry over music, played out through music, and out of it comes a spectacular alchemy of a masterpiece that blurs from the diegetic to non-diegetic, which is why we think it's one of the best uses of music in movies of all time. So what do you think? Disagree with any of our picks? Did we leave out any of your favorite uses of music in film? Feel musically blueballed by any of the 100 songs we just played half of? Check out the link in the description below to this episode's special Spotify playlist. Let us know how you feel in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more Cinefix movie lists.